We're coming off a totally wild NFL Week 1 to start Week 1 fantasy football. Insane performances from Tyreek Hill, Tua Tagovailoa, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey. Everyone had a great game. Not everyone though. Obviously, there were some major stinkers on there. Guys like Joe Burrow, Najee Harris, Drake London. Those types of weeks are going to lower their particular value moving forward in fantasy football. So what we need to do today is we need to go through the top 5 major trade targets to get that are going to be buy low guys before week 2 fantasy football. And I've picked out several winners on the FFN White Hat over the past several weeks. We're going to do it again this week. So make sure to drop your hottest take for either tonight's game of the Bills versus Jets, or drop your hottest take for week 2 fantasy football, and you will have a chance to win this FFN White Hat for free. So let's go ahead, just get right into these guys right here. The first guy I've got is Devonte Adams of the Las Vegas Raiders right here. So Devonte Adams, to me, this is honestly a pretty easy one. And the reason it's a really easy one to me is because there have been concerns with Devonte Adams stemming from the earlier portion of the offseason. Devonte Adams has never really had a clean perspective coming into 2023 fantasy football from a lot of people in the fantasy community. I mean, looking back to the offseason, he had the clear quarterback downgrade, which I will not argue. That is definitely a significant piece to this whole puzzle, is that he definitely did have a quarterback downgrade going from Derek Carr to Jimmy Garoppolo in that situation. There was also reports that maybe he just wanted out of Las Vegas entirely. There was a lot of reports saying that maybe he's just unhappy with the situation, doesn't want to play with Jimmy Garoppolo. That also adds a layer to it as well. He's in his 30s now also, so it's not like he's in the prime of his career, but he still looks really, really good. And now, yesterday what happened was not terrible. Like, when you look at the stat line on the screen, as you can see, it wasn't like it was some terrible week. He had 9 targets in the game, 6 catches for 66 yards. That's not a bad stat line for most people. But of course, in Devonte Adams standards, that's a really low week in particular. So that's the problem with Devonte Adams, is that the expectation is so high for a guy like that. When he doesn't live up to that, it lowers his value. And this is why he's a buy low guy, because his normal value is a lot higher than this, but it's been dropping and dropping since basically the offseason began, and as soon as Jimmy Garoppolo was officially going to the Las Vegas Raiders. So this is an easy buy low for me, because yes, while I do acknowledge that his ceiling is not going to be as high with Jimmy Garoppolo as it was with Derek Carr, the main selling point is that Devonte Adams is a target freaking hog. This guy has consistently seen a 30% target share with both Green Bay and Las Vegas over like the past 4 or 5 years. Yeah, he had a 34.6% target share in week 1. So his importance to this offense is not going anywhere. Now, it may not be tremendous next week either. They're playing the Buffalo Bills in week 2. But there are better days ahead here for a guy like Devonte Adams. I'm definitely going to be looking to get him on a very low price. So moving on to number 2, we've got Jahan Dotson of the Washington Commanders on this list right here. So obviously, the expectations for Jahan Dotson honestly have just kept growing and growing basically throughout the offseason. He consistently rose up draft boards and on ADP on places like Underdog. Like Underdog, he was like the wide receiver 40 at one point, rose all the way up to like the top 28 to 29 wide receiver in drafts. So the expectations just continually grew for Jahan Dotson. And honestly, if you look at the matchup in week 1, it was really good on paper. Like, the matchup itself was really, really good on paper. He did not live up to the lofty expectations in week 1. It was not a great week for Jahan Dotson. I mean, it wasn't bad. When you're looking at it on the screen right now, 7 targets, 5 receptions, 40 yards. It wasn't that bad. Like, it's not a terrible week. 6.5 fantasy points at half PPR. That's not what you're looking for when you're looking to flex a guy like Jahan Dotson in this particular week right here. But the important piece to note here really is that Jahan Dotson led the team in wide receiver targets in week 1. That is a major important piece to this right here. What I have said all offseason is that Jahan Dotson is going to be a better fantasy wide receiver in 2023 than Terry McLaurin. I stand by that because that's what we saw yesterday. Terry McLaurin only had 2 catches. This is a situation where Sam Howell just prefers to throw to Jahan Dotson. And since he didn't have a great week in week 1, he's going to still be a relatively low trade target right here. I would bet that you could send a guy like Rashad Bateman over his way this week. I like this trade target a lot. I think much better days are ahead for Jahan Dotson in particular. Now, moving on to number 3. This one might be my favorite buy low guy of the week. And it's Anthony Richardson of the Indianapolis Colts right here. This one probably does not sound like a buy low. Like, when you're looking at what he did on Sunday, he had a very, very good game. Threw for over 230 yards, had 40 yards on carries, and another touchdown to go with on the ground. Almost 22 fantasy points on Sunday. Like, this guy was really, really good in fantasy football terms on Sunday versus a very good team in Jacksonville. So this is not like a buy low as far as like he had a really bad game type of situation right here. Honestly, where this comes from is I think I may have just underestimated Anthony Richardson's situation and the potential for him to be a very, very good player right out of the gate. This is the situation that I thought he was stepping into. He was going into a situation with a rookie head coach, and he was not efficient and not a polished prospect at all coming out of college. Completed less than 55% of his passes in his final year in Florida, and Shane Steichen is a rookie head coach. But what's important to note here is the guy who is his coach. Even though he's a rookie coach, Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles last year when Jalen Hurts transformed into a completely different quarterback. Well, guess who was at the hands of that and was a massive piece to that whole process? It was Shane Steichen. He was instrumental for Jalen Hurts becoming the player that he is today. He was absolutely instrumental for it. The NFL acknowledges that he is a very good coach. Lots of coaches have lots of great things to say about Shane Steichen. So honestly, a guy like Anthony Richardson, who has some of the same qualities that Jalen Hurts does, this honestly could be a great fit. And I think that we saw the beginnings of it on Sunday. Like, I think that this could be a very good marriage, and honestly, I think this could take off a lot faster than I originally thought it would. So while it doesn't feel low right now, like if you send an offer to Anthony Richardson, you're probably going to have to expect to pay more than what you did to draft him. While it feels a little bit high right now, it probably is not going to feel as high to you when this guy starts ripping off top 3 to 5 fantasy finishes this season, because the potential he has right now is really, really good with the coach he has, and obviously with the athleticism that he possesses as well. I'm all in on trading for Anthony Richardson right now. Now, these next two guys, they go hand in hand here. We've got Joe Burrow and we've got T Higgins of the Cincinnati Bengals, obviously. Now, obviously, you're probably not going to get both of them in one single trade. You're probably going to have to do some work if you want both of them, but even if you just get one of them, I'm good with it, because the bottom line here is that they were totally atrocious on Sunday. And it wasn't just Joe Burrow and T Higgins. The entire Bengals team was just bad. It was a bad, bad week for the Bengals, man. Joe Burrow didn't even throw for 100 yards. Not even 100 yards. T Higgins gave you a freaking goose egg in fantasy football. So there's a lot of bad about this situation here. And I'm sure if you are actually holding Joe Burrow or T Higgins, you started them and you're reaping the negative benefits of having those guys in your starting lineup. But here's a couple of important things to note here with these guys right here. So when it comes to Joe Burrow, this will be his 3rd straight consecutive slow start to a season. Burrow has missed the offseason buildup to the regular season the past 3 years now. The 2021 season, he was recovering from the torn ACL, so he missed a bunch of time leading up to then. At the beginning of 2022, he got appendicitis and missed a lot of practice that year as well. And then this year, obviously, the calf injury put him down for a very, very long time. So as far as I am concerned, and I have said this in several videos over the past several months, this is all just par for the course for a guy like Joe Burrow right now. This is not out of the ordinary for Joe Burrow. It's something that really, really concerns me long term. He always comes back swinging. And by midseason, he's always scoring 35, 40 points. Like, he's going to bounce back. It's just the nature of how he has started his career. Unfortunately, fortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, it does suck for the people who hold him earlier in the season. But Joe Burrow's going to be just fine. And obviously, T Higgins, like, when you get a goose egg from someone, it never feels good. That is something that sticks in your head when you are going to bed at night. That is something that you do not forget. It is very hard to forget seeing a massive goose egg on your fantasy football roster that week. But remember this, T Higgins was targeted 8 times on Sunday versus the Cleveland Browns. So it's not like he was literally just ignored entirely. That is a very important piece to remember right here. This was just a bad day for the offense as a whole. A very, very bad day. I am buying all Bengals right now, though, because the reality is we all know that these bad week 1 performances, not just from the Bengals players themselves, but all of these bad week 1 performances, they're going to stick in people's mouths and it's going to leave a bad taste in their mouths. This is why you want to be in a situation where you are buying players on a team like the Bengals, because at the end of the day, the Bengals are going to be competing for a top 3 spot in the AFC by November. So that's it for this video. We've got another video coming up at 1 p.m. Central. It is going to be our waiver wire targets you need to get as well. So make sure you tune in for that, and I'll see you later on.